Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman. And I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. So with the holidays wrapping up, we approach New Year's quickly. It's been very, very busy, especially here at the Cinema Sit Down. I mean, just check out the new digs, right? I've been slacking. There's a couple movies that I've seen that I haven't had a chance to talk about, but we are gonna take that chance right now. And the first movie I'm gonna get into, man, movie. I was interested in mostly because of the casting and who the leads were. Otherwise, I was like, I mean, another Queen Elizabeth story. I wasn't necessarily super being pulled toward, I wasn't being pulled to the movie, but for its leading ladies. And after seeing the movie, it's okay. I think it's got some issues, but the leading performances are spectacular and totally make it worth a watch. So pull up a chair, man. Take a seat. We're getting ready to dive into spoiler-free Mary Queen of Scots. And as I said, man, this movie thrives on its leading ladies. Margot Robbie in a supporting role here as Queen Elizabeth that doesn't add too much to the Queen, does a really, really excellent job. I thought she, from just her general positioning and stature, really captured the essence of Queen Elizabeth. She had that sternness and that ruthlessness, especially towards the end of the movie. But Margot was able to give you some softer moments with Queen Elizabeth, and kind of painted this picture of a really conflicted woman, especially in regards to this story with her cousin Mary, Queen of Scots. And I think she does a good job of balancing how she, could be lighter. And then we kind of see the growth of where, the Elizabeth that we're all familiar with really shows up. And I thought Robbie did a really good job in handling all that. And her performance was really, really strong. Throw in the look, the wardrobe and costume design on her matches, what we're familiar with, but is really, really stellar. There's a stretch toward the end of the movie where we need to kind of elapse a bunch of time. So we do this bit where you see Elizabeth walking down, I think it's the same hallway multiple times. And every time she's not on screen, you're cutting back to Saoirse Ronan's Mary. But every time you come back to Elizabeth, she's got a different gown on. She's a little bit bigger. She feels a little bit bigger in stature. She looks more like the Queen did toward the stretch of time that we're really, really familiar with Queen Elizabeth. The sternness and the ruthlessness, you just kind of see it grow in her face because she doesn't have time to portray that in the movie as the story is Mary's. And then again, that's a story that we've seen. I thought Robbie, and especially that sequence, did a really, really good job of kind of advancing Queen Elizabeth in a way where it was like, wow, you could see the drastic difference between her at the beginning of the movie and her at the end of the movie. And it's not just from a physical appearance, because of the pox and all the makeup she put on toward the back half. But I just thought she did a really, really good job with what she was given, and just reminds us all why she is one of the top leading ladies in Hollywood. But our lead, Saoirse Ronan, wow, man, I tell you, she was one of my favorite performances last year in Lady Bird. And every time this girl pops up in something, man, she is fantastic. I thought she really, again, much like Robbie, kind of does this balance of being innocent, almost naive at times, and really sweet. And that's because of her age, which I think Ronan really, really grabs well. Queen Mary was married to the Prince of France. She grew up in France. So when she comes home to Scotland around 18, there's a lot of things going on, and a lot of people kind of posturing and positioning themselves on both sides, both in England and in Scotland. And in those moments, Ronan, it's like, hey, I've been a queen. I know what's up. Like, don't try to push me around. And she can be really, really strong and firm. But she has these wonderful soft moments with her handmaidens and their one gay pal, minstrel, Maurizio, who kind of gets to stay within her chambers and court. And those moments are really sweet. They're really touching. You get to see this light, fun side of Mary that kind of gives you the feeling that she is a kid. So I love that stuff, but I also love the way that she constantly handles herself throughout the entire movie. As far as, things that are thrown at her, how, she knows that she could be the Queen of Scotland and England. She's got a much stronger, claim to the throne than Elizabeth does. And yet, this is a woman, at least portrayed in the movie, that would have loved to have been Queen of England, but was never trying to take that from Mary. Really just wanted to have a relationship. Or not from Elizabeth, but really just wanted to have a relationship with Elizabeth. And you get this through all of the letters and writing throughout the movie. And I just, again, much like Robbie, I just thought Ronan did a really good job of balancing the softness and the sternness, and depicted a fairly strong, queen for Scotland. And the story in and of itself is interesting enough, despite some of the problems the movie has. I think the pacing is a little bit off in this. It does drag at times, and it is a little lengthy. And some of the sequences that you kind of come back to them, and you're like, I feel like we've just done something similar to this, like. And that stuff in the middle doesn't work great. And the rest of the story outside of these two, we've seen it before. And the other performances are all okay. There's really only one other standout for me, and that's David Tennant, because David Tennant stands out in everything. He plays a Protestant pastor who's kind of like the head of the Protestant church. He's got this ridiculously long beard, and the getup and everything about him. I just love his delivery. I mean, literally every time he was on screen, I was jotting something down like, oh man, David Tennant did it again. I love this guy. David Tennant should be in everything. And he does. He does a really good job. He acts his ass off, as he always does. And because of that, he's the only other person that stood out in the movie. Outside of that, the other performances are okay. And like I said, because this movie, I'm a big fan of period pieces, but period pieces can be certainly very tricky and are very easy and susceptible at falling into kind of boring, lengthy stretches, because if there's no action, say something recent like The Outlaw King, or, another way to entertain us, like, say, The Favorite, which had wonderful scathing humor, just delivering these historical pieces, it can get kind of long. In this movie, that happens a few times. But I mean, the wardrobe and the costume design is spectacular. The set design is spectacular. And the cinematography in the movie is really, really good. I mean, there are wonderful, beautiful landscape shots that are similar in different ways, right? There's a pair of shots. They don't happen, I don't think they happen close to each other, but very similar. We get to see Elizabeth on top of the palace at one point with England behind her. Whew, wow, take your breath away. And then conversely, we get to see Mary out on the hills of Scotland with all of Scotland behind her, and you're just like, wow. And then you take a look at those two things and go, look at the drastic difference in the places that these women were queen. I loved some of that. The very, very first time we see Margot Robbie in the movie, I thought was one of the most impressive shots of the whole movie. It's her looking out a window, and the camera's on the outside, but the way they shot it, I was like, oh, that is clever, and that is pretty. And there are some really, really nice things that Josie Rourke does from behind the camera. And there are things that worked really well in the movie. But, like I said, pacing's a little off, and it can get a little boring at times. But there are two big historical inaccuracies in this film that had a lot of people talking. And I can say after watching the movie, I was not negatively affected by either thing. The first is Queen Mary did not have a Scottish accent. Like I said, she was pretty much grew up her entire life in France. So she had a French accent. So Saoirse Ronan not having a French accent, very, very inaccurate. Doesn't bother me at all, especially when you're trying to, keep in the fact that, like, we're in these two places where a lot of people, there are a lot of English people everywhere in this movie. And, having Ronan with the very thick Scottish accent, it does help, at least when you're watching, keep you in remembering that, oh, yeah, this is Scotland and England. Whereas, French accent, I think could have thrown some people off. But we do get to see her speak French in the movie, which I thought, I was like, hey, it's good enough for me. I'm not going to kill the movie because Saoirse Ronan didn't throw on a French accent. But she does speak French a couple times, and I was like, good enough. The other thing in this movie has everybody talking. I guess it could be a spoiler, but like I said, it's fairly public knowledge. The two meet in the movie, and historically, Mary and Elizabeth never meet. Now, I'm not a historian. I can't speak to any of the other things in the story, whether how historically accurate or inaccurate they are. But they did never meet in real life, and that certainly plays large into their story. And the way the movie handles this scene, I thought they did a pretty good job, right? That they make it like, oh, we can never tell anybody that this meeting ever happened, and it doesn't take away from the rest of the movie where it is letters, and that's all it is between the two. And it felt more like a hypothetically, if no one knew and these two actually met, what would that conversation have looked like? And for me, I think it's the best stretch of the whole movie. It is some of the best camera work. The setup and execution of the sequence I thought was wonderful. They do some tricks to keep them from seeing each other. And for a while, I was like, oh, maybe they will never see each other face to face. And that could have been clever, as because you could have said, well, yeah, they were in the same room, but they never saw each other. So they do play with that, but they do eventually meet. But it's the best, I think, from both ladies. Acting wise, I think writing wise and material wise, it's really, really, really good. It really puts you in a spot where you can understand where both of these women are coming from, right? Like they're cousins and they want to be able to have a sisterly relationship, but with all the politics between their two, thrones, and how, Elizabeth has a weak claim and Mary's got a stronger claim, and all this other stuff and turmoil coming from the outside kind of affected the two of them. It really just kind of amplifies when you sit there and you see that, you go, wow, man, if this could have ever happened, these two could have coexisted, how drastically different would history have been? Because it certainly felt like these were two women that didn't want to hate each other. Mary continually is telling Elizabeth, hey, I'm not going to come take your throne, but if you don't have a kid, like if you named me heir, that would be great. And meanwhile, you have their courtiers posturing. This conversation that happens in the scene where they see each other, you really feel what the two women may have actually been feeling versus what they were kind of forced to feel and do. And I just thought it was the best executed cinematic scene in the movie. From a technical standpoint, everything in that scene delivered. So I didn't hate it. And like I said, the way it was posed kind of puts you in hypothetically, like maybe if it was kept secret and no one ever knew, maybe they could have met. And maybe this conversation would have happened. But I just thought it really gave it an insight, even more of an insight into these two and how it was like a relationship that screamed they should get along and just couldn't. And I thought that just really illustrated the whole movie quite well in that one sequence. So yes, historically inaccurate, really, really good in a movie though. So there you go. Those are all my thoughts on Mary Queen of Scots. Movie, okay, but really, really spectacular performances from Ronan and Robbie. And Josie Rourke does some nice things behind the camera. So I enjoyed it, even though it's not as good as I think it could have been. Certainly worth a watch. Definitely don't need to do it in the theater. But if you're a fan of historical pieces and period piece work, definitely check it out at some point. So that's all the Seaman's got to say, man. Now it's your turn. I want you to hit those comments down below. Let me know everything you're thinking. Did you like this movie? Did you hate this movie? What'd you think of the performances? What was good? What was bad? Did you just could you not get over the fact that the two meet in the movie when they didn't meet in history? Let me know all that down below. If you haven't seen the movie, have we enticed you? Do you want to check it out? Like I said, it's got its issues, but worth a watch. So leave everything you're thinking down below in the comments. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe and little bell so you get alerts every time I make a new video. For the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down, I'm Seaman, and I'm signing off. Peace. Well, if you aren't still here, looking for something else to check out that's Seaman related, why don't you check out a video like this guy or this guy? And if you really want to help the Seaman out in year 2, hit that subscribe button and come join the Cinema Sit Down squad, kids. You know what to do. See ya.